welcome to Sonic Dorms, Beat, Michael. First off, I did want to say congratulations on the release of this new record. Of course, project is called Unicorn Umbrellas. The title of the album is Every Picture Tells a Story, and an incredibly striking name. What's the story or the concept behind that moniker? If feel comfortable, anybody that wants to chime in on that.
Go ahead, Beat. It's all yours.
Yeah, I I probably annoyed Michael to the max with this. You know, I this was one of the things that drove me nuts, to be honest, because I thought when I knew it's gonna be an album, I should know what the project name is gonna be. And I'm Swiss, and Swiss artists usually don't go by their own name because they think it's difficult to pronounce. Although my name Zimmerman has a certain history in music for sure. But anyway, so I was thinking of what is a cool name, but nowadays when everybody streams, the problem is that you can no longer ignore if somebody already has that particular name. 30 years ago, you would maybe come up with a name and then somebody told you, "Oh, I've seen an ad in South Africa. There's a local band with the same name." And you say, whatever, who gets famous first wins, right? And you can't do that anymore. So I was having ideas, oxymorons, funny names, and I was typing them in Spotify. Oh, already taken. I think I went through a short list of 500 names, and I panicked at some point. I can't find a good one. And, I sat down on the couch of Dr. Michael Sadler, the psychologist.
That credit is not listed on the album, just so you know.
Exactly. Yeah, we're only revealing that bit, and it was not the only instance for that matter. But anyway, at some point I said, maybe I could still use my name, be at something. And I was typing it into a large language model and say, "Can you provide me with some word combinations that use be at?" And it came with some boring ones like "be at the right place," "be at this and that," and so on. I said, no, something more novel, something more original. And then it spit out stuff like, okay, how about "be at the Marshmallow Serenade," stuff like that. And one of them was "be at the Unicorn's Umbrella." And I thought, that's pretty cool. So I took that, and Michael and I and Gwen met because SAGA was playing in Switzerland. And we met, and I showed them a draft and I said, "What do you think?" And then both went, "Oh yeah, that's actually quite cool." And then we changed it instead of Unicorn's Umbrella to Unicorn Umbrellas because the flow is a little bit easier. That's where it came from. And also when I then Googled the name, all these umbrellas with unicorns on it for like 4-year-old girls came up. I said, that's actually quite cool. And I bought one. I actually got a factual umbrella at home with a unicorn on it, and I used that as my avatar on the platforms.
He uses it in his daily life, I might add.
Yeah, exactly. It's not big enough for two, but it's protective for one.
I'll tell you what, it's incredibly unique. I hadn't heard about a unicorn umbrella prior to this record, and that's hard to do these days because it seems like every name under the sun has been taken for the most part, right?
Yeah. That was the frustration. And anytime I was walking my dog and I thought, "Oh, I got a good one," and I came home and typed it in, and shit, already taken. That's how it happened.
But if you think about it, the days when it's raining unicorns and you don't have your unicorn umbrella, you just get soaked in unicorns. So it's a necessary thing as well.
It's actually a very valuable asset.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, of course, you've been fronting SAGA for decades now and collaborated with a few people widely. But when Beat first approached you, what was it about his compositions or demo arrangements that made you say, "I absolutely have to sing on this project"?
Um, I don't know that it was anything specific. As I've spoken with you before about my criteria, as it were, for doing outside projects, and it's really the music. I say, listen, I may or may not be interested. I need to hear, the music first, and what you're planning. It's got to touch me in some way. I've got to feel like I can contribute something to it. I won't do outside projects just for the sake of it. Um, for the paycheck or whatever. It's got to be meaningful to me. I've got to feel like I can contribute something to make it the best it can be, because it's a waste of time otherwise for myself and for the audience and for the artists that I'm working with. And that was the case with Beat. I said, he approached me. I think it was back in January 2024. I think is the first time I got the email from him.
Right.
And he said, I'm doing an album, and my first choice for vocals was, I first thought he wanted me to do a couple of songs, and I thought, okay, well, send me. And then it became clear that he wanted me to be the singer of the album. But I said to him, same thing. I said, send me the material, and I'll let you know, under those conditions, as it were, criteria. And I sent me three. I think he sent me 3 or 4 or 5 songs in the beginning. And I immediately heard something that could be developed into something really, really cool. And I thought that I could help with that. And I thought my voice would probably suit most, if not all, of the material, with a few tweaks here and there. But no, it was really just hearing it and deciding whether I could contribute and really make it what I could hear it was wanting to be, as it were, from my end anyway.
Okay, and Bia, I know you grew up in an era where, Michael's work was legendary. Was there an exact moment during that recording process where you sat back at the mixing console, heard Michael's vocal track, and just thought, I can't believe this is an album that I'm a part of? Did you ever have a moment like that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did. Several actually. Well, first of all, when he sent over the first track, it was already clear that this would.
So you thought to yourself, "What have I done?
No,
is it too late?"
Yeah, no. I said that. I said that when you said, "Okay, let's do that together." At some point, I said, "Shit, what did I do?" I'm a complete amateur when it comes to studio mileage. With somebody who did 22 records with his own band and worked with Rupert Hine and all these greats, and then comes me. I'm my comfort zone is live playing. I'm not scared by big names when I go on stage with somebody, but when it comes to studio, different story. So yeah, that these moments did exist. One key moment was when he sent over the first track, and I remember that very well. It was actually. Michael was sitting on an airplane going to Europe because they were doing a batch of shows in Germany for just a week or so, I think. And he was sending that when he was actually on that airplane. And I was sitting in Dubai and and receiving it, and I was just shaking my head. I said, can you make better decisions in your life than this? And another one, which was a key moment, was the second track was Farewell, that he sent over as the demo version of his vocals. And that song is about the death of my father, and actually the fact that he had an aneurysma in his heart that he didn't want to operate, and that could have meant that any day this is going to kill him, and he was perfectly at peace with this situation, and that inspired me for the song and the lyrics. And so it's rather emotional because I was very impressed by how my dad took that situation, and there's a whole story to why it's called Farewell that is probably too long to tell here. But anyway, so Michael sent me that, and usually because of the time difference, those messages arrived in the morning for me when I got up, right? Because he often worked late night, and then when he was happy, he was pressing send, which meant when I got up in the morning, grabbed a coffee, and sat down at the computer, and I got a message, and hey, here's a demo, and Farewell came over, and I put it on loud, and my wife came down and said, "Did you tell him the full story about this?" I said, "No, I actually didn't." She said, "He sounds like he's actually singing his own story, you know?" I said, "Well, I guess this is why Michael is Michael, and this is why, he has the reputation he has." But that was a moment where I was deeply impressed by how he can channel the feelings that I didn't even offer the full story. I told him what it is about, and he was able to channel the feelings so that people thought he is actually singing his own story.
Well, it wasn't. It was. Thank you for the very, very kind words, by the way. I I mean, it wasn't that difficult for him. I mean, the way you wrote it. I mean, it was fairly obvious to me, anyway. With the feeling behind it and the intent behind it, I could read between the lines, and I was imagining, without being told what the circumstance was, what you were trying to put across, at least vaguely. So it wasn't as much of a stretch for me to try and put that into my performance. So credit to you for the words that you chose and the way you expressed it. So something in the way you did that told me what the story was about, or the sentiment at least was. So.
So yeah, there were these moments to answer that question for sure, where I think I'm really glad I trusted my intuition and went for it and asked.
That kind of leads into my next question, which is directed at Michael. I mean, Michael, I know you've developed a very distinctive, dare I say, theatricality, a brilliant use of vocal dynamics in the way that you work and approach a vocal, that distinctive vibrato that you utilize throughout your career. How did you adapt that iconic, say, Sadler style to fit Biot's specific arrangements here?
Um, I didn't. I mean, in a nutshell, I just I've always just sung naturally. I've always just sung uh, whatever seems appropriate for the track, for the piece of music, for the. I don't consciously adjust my approach or adjust my style of singing for from track to track. If the track wants to sound like, I mean, if you listen to Prison Within compared to Farewell, for example, um, you don't sing those two songs the same way. It's just the way it is. Do I consciously change my voice? Yes and no. Yes, I do, because I'm going to sing a ballad, that way, and then I'm going to sing a full-on sort of rock tune that way, and express it that accordingly. Um, but intentionally, I don't. It's not a calculated thing. I guess is what I'm trying to say. It just happens naturally. The music tells me what to do. It tells me what kind of expression it needs. And fortunately, I have an arsenal that I can draw from, which comes fairly easily to me in the meantime. Wasn't always that way. I mean, in the beginning, I sang almost every song like a choir boy, because I had literally, spent my early years, about almost 8 years in a church choir when I was a kid, and then went into rock and roll. The first band I was in was a blues band. And I'm singing, I'm singing like authentic Chicago blues, like a choir boy, and it's just like really. And if you listen to the first three albums, first three Saga albums, and it's a little bit that way. If you hear it, it's very precise and the vibrato is where it's supposed to be, and sometimes a little over the top. And the turning point for me was working with Rupert Hine vocally, and I'll never forget him saying, "Okay," because he had a meeting when we first met him in the studio in England. Um, he went through everybody, like, let's talk about the drums, let's talk about the guitar, what his impression and ideas he had and that kind of thing. And he left me to the end and said, "Okay, let's talk about the vocals." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go." And he said, "All right." He said, "Michael, we know you can sing. So there's no question about that. Now what I want you to do is forget everything you've learned." I was like, "What?" And he literally meant, you've got the discipline. Now, just look at the words, read the words, and just sing those words, feel those words. Don't worry about doing it exactly right. I mean, we're in the studio. That's the whole point of it. It's just getting the best performance. It's more of the difference between it being a recital and a performance. And he taught me that. And since that time, I've been much more more able to adjust my approach from song to song, artist to artist. So I really give a lot of credit to Rupert Hyde, may he rest in peace, for helping me adjust my approach to singing in general. So.
Well said. Yeah, I can definitely tell when there was a shift and there was that more, suddenly your vocals become a lot more emotive. Not that they weren't before, but you could tell there was that feel.
There'd be more humanity in them, I think. More, like I say, more of a performance than just, here's the song. This is the way you sing this song. So.
Biat, as far as the album title goes, Every Picture Tells a Story. I know that's highly evocative in a lot of ways. It paints a lot of mental pictures. When you were coming up with the songs for this record, was this something where you felt it needed to be conceptual to some degree, or did every song have to kind of tell its own isolated tale?
Yeah, I mean, the title for the album was there a long time ago already, before I even knew I was going to make an album. That there was I think it even goes back to the 90s, probably inspired actually by SAGA and the what was it called? The Beginner's Guide to Throwing Shapes, right? And that had this cover with, I think it was actually Michael himself and Jim Crichton doing that throwing shapes thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Ian was in there too. We basically just set up like a shadow screen and whatever, just kept taking pictures of silly things and different poses, basically.
So that was something that was rather leaving an impression for me, that cover. And on that tour, just a side remark, was actually the first time I met Michael in person. Not that he remembers, but I do.
Like anyway. It was yesterday.
And I was learning some software back in the day. I can't remember what it was, but some design software. And that had these clip parts, and I was pulling all these clip parts into a file and arranging them. And I said, it's maybe a little bit a copy of what SAGA did with those different pictures, if this was a cover of a record, but it could be called Every Picture Tells a Story. That was the first time when I had this title in mind. And I thought, one day when I will make an album and I have a say, then I might call that Every Picture Tells a Story. And the second inspiration was Mussorgsky with Pictures at an Exhibition, which was a piano piece that I played some of the pieces back in the days when I was more classical oriented. And I thought, what Mussorgsky did was quite cool, because he went through an exhibition of a friend of his and looked at the pictures or the paintings and made music and to interpret what he saw. And I thought, actually, doing this the other way around would also be interesting, and say, have music first and the story that goes with the music, and then create a picture that reflects the music somehow, or reflects the story, or both. And so that's what I thought I will do, but not necessarily as a concept album that has a coherent story altogether with the 9 songs making one picture, but rather, as I always say, it's like a stroll through an arts gallery, and you watch that picture and maybe it triggers your own story in your head, So that was the idea. And what I hear now from people that have the record, they say they understand it's not a concept album in terms of you have to listen to the whole album for it to make sense, but they want to do that. They don't want to listen just to one track. They want to listen through the whole thing because it seems to take you on a journey somehow.
Absolutely, and I did notice that. I mean, once the album kicks off with the prison within, onto tracks like I Regret, there is a consistency, obviously, within the production, within the obviously Michael's voice, telling these different narratives that does, for me personally as a fan, keep me intrigued and to wanting to know what's going to happen next. And that's part of, to me, one of the most exciting elements of progressive leaning music is the fact that it keeps you anticipating what the next move is going to be because it's always changing. So your brain is constantly shifting while listening, which this album definitely brings, if you ask me. So fantastic
Yeah,
job on that.
we're also thanks for those words. I mean, we also carefully selected how we sequence the songs. That was not an easy decision. Now, obviously, there are the hard criteria like don't put two songs with the same tempo and maybe even similar key next to the previous, next to each other.
And don't start the album with a ballad.
Yeah, don't start the album with a ballad and
unless it's something like Stairway to Heaven, then you're pretty safe.
Right. Stairway to Heaven, you said?
Then you can start the album that way.
Yeah. But actually, side remark, that the fact that there's a stairway to heaven but a highway to hell tells you a lot about the expected traffic numbers. Good. Where was I? Yeah, so the also ending each side of the vinyl, I learned from Michael that, be careful, you need to put a highlight at the end of side A and at the end of side B. And so, yeah, I gave it quite a lot of thought and, made sure that, there's always a little bit of a change in style and direction and key and tempo, feel. And that's what came out in the end.
I mean, the running order on an album is very much akin to a live show, putting together a live set. Same kind of thing. It's all about the flow and the ups and downs and the high moments and the low moments. So it's almost as difficult, as it were. It's a tricky thing to do, but yeah. I was used to it for a while now.
Michael, I noticed that your family members, Gwen and Saren, are credited on this record for backing vocals and I believe design and typography as well, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it was a family affair. Yeah,
That's incredible.
I called their contribution vocally the MSG choir, the Michael, Saren, and Gwen choir. And yeah, I mean, Gwen got a hold of a lot of discussions with Beat about his original concept. They went back and forth, excuse me, with the idea of what it would look like, and she put a lot of time and effort into it, along with Beat, back and forth, coming up with what you see as the final product, with a lot of help from Saren, doing the grunt work, as it were, assembling pieces and that, but. Yeah, I mean, all three of us were very much involved in the album across the board. So yeah, it's quite a family affair. It turned out that way. It wasn't something that we planned, but I'm glad it did work out that way, because when the final look of the album happened and I had a look at it and all the hard work they had done, especially Gwen, I thought it now looks like it sounds. And the way the packaging presents itself gives you an idea of the content, and it complements what you're about to hear. So I was blown away when I first saw the final outcome. So.
No, yeah, I absolutely love, to me, the packaging, everything about this record. You could tell that there was a lot of love and a lot of time and a lot of effort put into this. And these days, where it's becoming easier for people to use technology as a crutch to put all this in creativity into the records that they say they love doing. Kind of contradictory, if you ask me. And I prefer this. I like seeing a record like this being delivered that is done organically and
Yeah,
done in
yeah.
that what is now deemed almost old school in a manner.
Yeah, it's a shame because you spend all this time doing the musical side of things, and then it's like, oh yeah, well let's put this as a cover and this and that, and it's secondary almost, and that's not the case. I mean, as I said, I mean it really should reflect the contents. You pick up an album and you should give you some kind of idea what to expect. Um, just or even the level of professionalism or something. There's this disconnect between all the hard work put into the audio, and it's like, oh yeah, well, just I don't know, get a picture of a tree, that'll do it. Okay, well, you don't care that much, or it just seems like such a throwaway, as you said. I mean, it's just slap a cover on it and release it already. It's not all about, people don't look at album covers anymore anyway. Well, okay, that's true to some degree, but I don't know. When there's a reference picture to go with it, even if it's on a streaming platform, there should be some kind of visual that is striking and reflects what you're listening to.
Well said.
Well, I think that there's still enough people that actually want to have, they want to
Yeah,
go through the booklets and they want to see what the credits are and so on and so
yeah,
forth.
yeah.
How long was it the process of making this record from start to finish?
If we count, if we really, I think if we count really everything from the moment where I said, let me take care of those ideas that piled up over these years, I think 10 years, right? I do think that I started recording and arranging and writing, throwing things away again back in 2016, but with no pressure. I didn't wake up one morning saying, let me make an album with Michael Sadler and Todd Zuckerman. And so I just wanted to take care of those ideas in principle, but with no pressure. And I just had a frustrating experience with my fusion band at the time that I wanted to, reanimate, and we couldn't work it out and so on. So at some point I said, come on, there's no point. And I had my studio redone, and upgraded. And I thought, well, okay, let me now take care of this. And I started recording parts and writing and arranging. And whenever I felt like it, whenever I felt in the zone, I worked on it without having a goal, without having a deadline. And at some point I had tracks that sounded good, and I thought, now I need a real guitar to see where it's going. That's when Zlatko came into the game, and he was relatively quick, I think, but at some point there was the pandemic also, and we couldn't do much, especially not with vocalists, and but I had time to actually fine tune all the stuff in that, and yeah, and then at some point, as Michael said before, 2024 was, I think in the end of 2023, I did all the scratch vocals myself, with lead and I think it was four voice harmony arrangements on all the songs, and then I knew, okay, now let's ask somebody from the top of the game. And then I approached Michael at the beginning of 2024, and he started working right away. But as we all know, that there was also SAGA on tour at the time, so they had batches of shows in Europe and the US, so there were interruptions. And then, of course, the dramatic turn of events, as one could say, with his health issue towards August, September in 24, which, made us take a break. And then they went on tour, so, everybody else would do recovery at home, but Michael goes on tour. And we met at, this was the last show of the tour. Actually, why didn't the roadies play any games on that show? I was always wondering. They didn't do any jokes on
It
that.
doesn't happen as much as it used to.
All right, okay.
Yeah. There used to be a ritual that was like the last night you just go crazy, silly things on stage and that. But I found that it started tapering off, and it really doesn't happen as much. Like I say, yeah.
Then I saw them give you, just 2 stumps for drumsticks when you played the solo. So yeah, we met on that last show of the tour, and he said, "Give me a couple of weeks to recover from this event, and then I'll be back in the studio taking care of this." And he kept word, So I think soon after New Year, when all the festivities were over, he was becoming serious again, and then the output was relatively quick, and I think we were done by July last year, I think, right? We were ready to go in principle. We had the mixes and everything.
I have to throw in the fact that I'm my own worst critic, and I'm very fussy about the way I do vocals, and I'm never satisfied. I'm not satisfied with any of the vocals I've done on 22 albums with SAGA or any guest. I'm never 100% satisfied. I always think, I'd like to do that one more time, but you have to. I've learned that there has to be a cutoff point. When everyone else is saying, sounds great, you have to start believing them at some point, or you'll just keep doing it over and over and over. So some of the, not delay, but the length of time it takes to record is just me, vocally anyway, taking the time to do it what I would consider properly and getting the best out of the song. Everything is for the sake of the song. And it's not a matter of going, oh, do I sound great right here? It's not that. Is the song, is it getting the utmost out of my performance? Does it suit the track? Is it blending in the way it should? And so I pay particular attention to that when I'm doing recording. So I'm, like I say, and I'm very fussy. So some of the delay, as it were, was an artistic decisions on my part. So.
Well, if you ask me, I would have, your voice to me has not changed. I was, when I was messaging Beat a couple weeks ago, we were discussing this record to some degree, and I was mentioning how your voice has not changed one bit from a record that would have came out 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Your voice sounds identical, and you're one of the, and I mean this as a compliment, you're one of the rare freak shows out there of singers that has not, as it still sounds incredible vocally.
I'm very, very lucky. Sometimes other singers get really frustrated with me. They go, "What's your secret? What's your warm up? What do you do before a show? How do you warm up?" And I say, "Well, I don't." And they get really angry. Is it like tea and lemon, tea with honey and lemon? And I'm like, no. Do you warm up? You do your scales? No. But I look. I've taken care of it as best I can, except for the 80s where they told me I had a good time. For the most part, tried to be as healthy as possible. I always sung. I learned to sing the right way, as it were, like from your abdomen, from down here, instead of through your throat, which can lead to burnout after a while. And I'm just really lucky, I think. And yeah. Like I say, lots of singers look at me and go, "What's your secret, man? How come you sound like you?" I don't know. I don't have a secret. It's just I'm blessed in that way, and I'm grateful for it every single day that I can keep singing, because that's me. The day I can't sing anymore, going on stage, I will miss if it gets to that point where you have to get me on in a wheelchair. I would say no. But as long as I can sing and still create, I'll be fine. But yeah. Up until now, I've just been really lucky. So.
Well, I'm glad, because you're truly to me, one of the best out there. You were going to mention something, Beat?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's I would assume, with an educated guess, that it's because of his education, his technique, that doesn't doesn't pay any toll on the
Yeah,
voice.
it's a lot to do with it. Like I said, with except for Rupert saying, "Forget everything you've learned," but the technique was already there, hard and fast, and I had learned to do it, sing the right way, as I call it. So I'm sure that has something to do with it.
Speaking of live shows, I know this album, of course, features, musicians spread across, different bands and regions and whatnot. A brilliant studio tapestry, if you will. But are there any talks or logistical dreams of sorts of bringing Unicorn Umbrellas to the live stage?
Well, dreams from my side, sure. I mean, it would be an absolute bucket list item to tick off to be on stage with Michael to start with, and but also the other guys. I think the band, as it were, as such, has a good chemistry musically, and also have a feeling that we would kill it live. But whether it's going to happen or not at this moment, I don't know. That it's first of all, I don't know if there's any interest really from, for example, Michael's side, because his priority is obviously Saga and the 50 years
No, I'm
anniversary.
ready. I'm ready tomorrow. If you say when and where, I'll be there. It's
Okay.
really, what it boils down to. It's just logistics, and whether, I don't know if there's any demand or whatever. You create the demand. If we say, look, we're going to go do some shows, you start small. It's very organic, like with the record. It's word of mouth, and it gets out there. And I think we would kill it live, and I think that would get around really fast. So to me, it's just timing and logistics, because I know the other guys would love to do it. So
Right.
it's will it happen? I would like to think so. Is there any plans right now? No,
No.
but I certainly wouldn't rule it out.
Right. And yeah, and it's as Michael says, it's is the demand there, and are we, are we in the position to create the demand? I think we need a little bit more time to tell that, and then maybe figure some logistics. Maybe we could be opening, we could be opening for Saga. I mean, it makes
Yeah,
it
I'll pull
makes it a
double.
bit
I'll
of a
pull
hard job.
double. Yeah, then we'll put the voice to the real test, right? Thanks a lot.
Or we do it, or we open for Sticks. Then
There you go.
Mr. Todd has a bit of a
Yeah,
hard evening, but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. So it's also because we did the whole thing consciously without a label at some point, that obviously we would have to initiate, thought about it and figure out how the logistics work and so on. But yeah, I would really love to do that. This
Yep. I think we all would.
yeah.
I know this album was just released not too long ago, but have you already caught yourselves throwing around ideas for a follow-up album, a second Unicorn Umbrellas album?
I have some stuff, sketched up, but not, not really fit. I'm in the same position as Michael. I hate about 90% of the stuff that I do. So I'm equally fussy. There's as something we have in common. So yeah, I do have things. I do have little bits and bytes that I recorded so I don't forget them. But it would require some attention to, for example, write the bridge, write the chorus. I have maybe about 2 songs that are more or less complete in terms of being sketched, how they should sound, but not actually recorded in a way that I can show it to somebody. And the reason also is I needed to get this out of my system. I was not in a position, although I did my keyboard work, it was more or less already complete when Michael started to work on it, apart from obviously some tweaks we did when we discussed arrangements together, or also especially on the ballads, because I needed him to sing first to figure out, where can I fill, where do I have to fill stuff in order to, carry the song. And even though I didn't have much to do in terms of recording in the late stage of the production, I couldn't be creative for new stuff. I needed to get this out of my system and really with the release, with the delivery of the CDs and the LPs, and with the release on the stream platform, there was a quite a bit of weight that came off my shoulders, and then I could sit down again in the studio and be more creative than before, you know. So I somehow this had to get out, but not only me working on it, but the whole thing needed to get out. I needed to see how the reactions are and so on and so forth. But yeah, I will work on new material. It would be great if we could do a follow-up in the same lineup if the guys are interested to do it. You know. Which at this point I would assume yes, because the first product was pretty good.
Pretty good. This is a phenomenal album, and I can tell right upon first listen that there was a lot of time and effort put into quality control, which again is something that to me personally is becoming more and more sparse over time, sadly. But I love hearing an album with a lot of thought put into it, a lot of creativity, and a lot of effort. And this definitely has that. So I appreciate you for making this album because I felt like I needed it in my life right around now. So really,
Okay, that's a compliment.
yeah.
It was a fun album to make. There's a lot of heart in this record when I listen to it. That's what I feel. There's a lot of emotion, and people, all of the guys had a vested interest in it from the get-go. You can tell from the playing, and everybody. Again, it's you know, from song to song, it's the sum of the parts, and it's all for the sake of the song. It's not, you know, how can I make myself stand out on drums or bass or guitar or vocals, you know, really make mine a standout performance. It's not about that, and we all understood that, and you can hear that it's everybody, you know, how do we optimize our performance to get the best out of this song and put it across the way it's meant to come across. So that's what you're hearing, I think.
I think one thing is also that we avoided tinkering, as I call it, to the max. So, you know, there's no, or at least hardly any copy and pasting, like, okay, this was a good take on the verse, let's copy that everywhere. Nobody did that really, and you know, Todd was the leading example in that sense, because he did everything in the 1 or 2 takes, right? He listened to the stuff about 200 times when he was on flights, when he was in the hotel room waiting for Styx shows and stuff like that. And he knew in his head what he's going to do. And the day before he recorded, he sent me a video when he showed me which snare he chose for which song. So that's the amount of thought he put into it. And then he did everything in a take or two. He wouldn't also, if there's a part like in Farewell, for example, where there's a middle section where he doesn't play, he wouldn't stop and then punch in when it's time for him to play again. He just stays in the music because he wants the feeling to be there for him. So, and I think that's what makes him part of the storytelling rather than just the guy who plays the drum tracks. And we all did that. I didn't copy paste. I played performances. The only time I copied the part was when in a live setup I would actually double the sound with you know, a MIDI stack, so to speak. Right. And so I would also play the part once, and you would hear maybe 5 different keyboards or 5 different synths to play that.
I think that when you just said it, and you use the word performance, that's why it feels the way it does, is because we all treated it like they were performances of our parts, and not you know, individual bits and pieces, and take. It was not these songs were not constructed in terms of the recording process. They weren't put together. They were a collection of the 5 performances, is the best way to describe it, and that's I think that's what makes the difference.
Right. And Rene, for example, he was the last one to record, and he said he actually put a big screen. He put a big screen in his studio because we also had the video session from Top, right? So we had all the videos when he recorded his tracks. So Ronnie was not actually playing just to the sound of the recording. He was playing to the video of Tots, to see him play, and he said it made him feel like I'm actually in the room with this guy playing those tracks, you know.
Yeah.
So I think you can hear that at least subconsciously.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't have told me, I'd say that's why you hear there's a synchronicity of sorts in the air when you listen to the record.
Right.
It also, I mean, also when you do it that way, for me as a singer, it's such a delight to sing on top of something like that, because it just flows, and there's a movement in the music. It's not like bump 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 bump. It allows you to sing the way that I do sing, because the music is moving, because it is a performance, and you can feel the guys, and it made it a lot easier for me to sing. So.
I appreciate you for being a part of this discussion today. What, if you wouldn't mind each sharing, what's coming up next? Do you have any upcoming projects?
For me personally, at the moment, I just kind of focused on. I've got one more show with SAGA. The band has one more kind of a warm up to getting used to being back on stage together, and also we're priming ourselves for the 50th anniversary, which is going to be. It's got to be very, very special. So we're gearing up for that, obviously, for next year. But I have Progstock coming up with the band with my son. I'm basically his music director. It's his band. It's myself, my son Saren, Matt Dorsey, Paul Bielatovich on guitar, and Jimmy Keegan drums. We're doing Progstock in October. And other than that, like I say, just... I'm slowly working on a little bit of solo material, but that takes a bit of a backseat right now. But I'm always doing that, always tinkering around a little bit. But the main focus after Progstock, obviously, is next year. It's got to be a very special year. So lots and lots of ideas for staging and just the presentation of the show. So yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah, me, my current project is, putting the word out for this album right now. I'm trying to get as much attention as I can. So other than that, I don't have anything planned at the moment. As I said before, I write here and there, and I record bits and bytes that may eventually turn in a sequel. But other than that, I'm focusing on getting this promoted. Because I think we only just started, but it picks up. I see that that now the reviews are slowly coming. Today was another one that was published on Background magazine. That was fantastic. And
but I've said to you, I've said this from the start. When Beat and I were talking about the approach to this album, and I said to him, "This is not the kind of it's going to explode out of the box, because it's not that kind of record. This is this is going to happen gradually and organically, and it's going to be word of mouth, and that is the best kind to me, because it's built on feedback and like someone knowing a secret. Like, oh, have you heard? You got to check this out. And there's nothing like that. And I remember that growing up, it's like, oh, have you heard this new album? It's just blah 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 blah. Oh no. And word of mouth speaks volumes, because it's usually coming from a trusted source, like one of your best friends or whatever, who shares your similar tastes, and it's growing that way, and it's a more honest and sincere feedback that we're getting, and I think it's a more lasting one as well when you get that kind of feedback, because it's like I say, it's organic, and it's born of a very, not a cerebral place, but from the heart, and because people really connect with it that way. So
yeah, I had to. I mean, in principle, I'm a very patient person, but I also have.
Not with this.
There is a piece in me that is very impatient or impatient, right? That's hence
the therapy sessions.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks to Dr. Sadler, the therapist. He sorted me out.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
So because obviously, I said, now today the CDs are delivered. why are they not sold out tomorrow, kind of thing. I started to learn that it's not going to happen, as he said. It's not going to be a blast out of the box. And
it's
then,
you're a brand new artist. You're just,
yeah, yeah, and you know, people need to notice first, and there's many people say, "Oh, I didn't know," you know. And recently there was this radio guy from the UK said, you know, he was actually, um, he was actually just coming across the name, and he said, that's a strange name. What is that? What does the music sound like?" And he listened to it and he liked it, and he put it on the radio show. So yeah, it's, you know, it organically picks up steam. So we just need to make sure the momentum keeps going.
Of course.
I find that there's so much going on people's radars now that the attention spans are diminishing. But if we continue pressing forward and the quality is there, I think people will join along for the ride. And the quality is definitely there. Where can people find a copy or at least listen to Every Picture Tells a Story? Do you, if you wouldn't mind sharing, where can people find the music, Beat?
Actually, obviously on all the streaming platforms that are known to mankind, and on my website, beat-zimmermann.com, there's a shop where we sell the limited edition, signature edition CDs and LPs. And I think you, Max, you can confirm that the package really looks high quality, right?
Yeah.
Comes with the CD comes with a 24-page booklet with the pictures and the stories, and the vinyl. Michael has one. Actually, did you notice that the hand numbering is your year of birth? Did you notice?
I did. Yes, I did. Thank you. We won't mention what that is, though.
No, we won't. No, of course not. No, so they come hand numbered and signed by everybody, and it's really a high quality product. Apart from the outstanding design by Saren and Gwen, it's also the way it was made by the company in Germany. I'm quite impressed by the finish of all this. So yeah, this can be bought on my website. Another possibility for those who are interested in a digital purchase, it's on Bandcamp. And yeah, that's about it. You know.
Wonderful. Well, with all that being said, Unicorn Umbrellas is the project. The album title, Every Picture Tells a Story. Phenomenal album. Just my 2 cents here, but I absolutely adore this album, and I cannot wait to. It rewards you with repeated listens, because I've listened to this album on and off over the last couple of weeks, and I love it even more now than I did then. So.
Okay.
I do appreciate your time, Michael, Beat, and all the best on your journey, and much success to this album, okay?
Always a pleasure, Max. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Max. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.